The first topic in the second meeting was essentially, why does it matter to DOJ if one White House official lies to another? The second topic related to the applicability of criminal statutes and the likelihood that the Department of Justice would pursue a criminal case. The third topic was his concern that their taking action might interfere with an investigation of Mr. Flynn. And the fourth topic was his request to see the underlying evidence.
Were all those topics satisfied with respect to your impression after the second meeting?
Yes, the only thing that was really left open there was the logistics for us to be able to make arrangements for them to look at the underlying evidence.
And you did make those arrangements?
We did make those arrangements, but again, I don't know whether that ever happened, whether they ever looked at that evidence or not.
Fair enough. Apparently, Lieutenant General Flynn remained National Security Advisor for 18 days after you raised the Justice Department's concern. In your view, during those 18 days, did the risk that Flynn had been or could be compromised diminish at all?
You know, I don't know that I'm in a position to really have an answer for that. I know that we were really concerned about the compromise here, and that was the reason why we were encouraging them to act. I don't know what steps they may have taken, if any, during that 18 days to minimize any risk.
Did you discuss this with other DOJ career professionals?
Certainly leading up to our notification on the 26th, it was a topic of a whole lot of discussion in DOJ and with other members of the intel community, and we discussed it at great length. But after the 30th, again, I wasn't at DOJ anymore, so I didn't have any further discussions after that point about what was being done with respect to that.
Did you consult with other career prosecutors?
Oh, absolutely. We had really the experts within the National Security Division. As we were navigating this situation, they were working with the FBI on the investigation, and we were trying to make a determination about how best to make this notification so that we could get the information to the White House that they needed to be able to act.
So was the point that you were trying to make, yes or no will be fine, that General Flynn had seriously compromised the security of the United States and possibly the government by what he had done, whatever that was?
Well, our point is that logic would tell you that you don't want the National Security Advisor to be in a position where the Russians have leverage over him. Now, in terms of what impact that may have had or could have had, I can't speak to that. But we knew that that was not a good situation, which is why we wanted to let the White House know about it.
You were worried that General Flynn would be compromised. What did you think would happen if he were? And how do you believe he would have been compromised?
Well, we had two concerns. Compromise was certainly the number one concern. And, you know, the Russians can use compromised material, information, in a variety of ways, sometimes overtly and sometimes subtly. And again, our concern is that you have a very sensitive position like the National Security Advisor, and you don't want that person to be in a position where, again, the Russians have leverage over him. But I will also say another motivating factor is that we felt like the Vice President was entitled to know that the information he had been given and that he was relaying to the American public wasn't true.
So what you're saying is that General Flynn lied to the Vice President.
That's certainly how it appeared, yes, because the Vice President went out and made statements about General Flynn's conduct that he said were based on what General Flynn had told him. And we knew that that just flat wasn't true.
Well, as the days went on, what was your view of the situation? Because there were, I guess, 2 weeks before, was it 18 days before Director Flynn was dismissed?
Well, again, I was no longer with DOJ after the 30th, and so I wasn't having interaction or any involvement in this issue after that day. I think his point when he made that point to me was that he wasn't sure why the Department of Justice would care about one lying to another, not to be discussing whether that was in fact a crime.
And the reason you told him was what?
Was that, it was a whole lot more than one White House official lying to another. First of all, it was the Vice President of the United States, and the Vice President had then gone out and provided that information to the American people who had then been misled, and the Russians knew all of this, making Mike Flynn compromised now.
You said it earlier, I believe, that Mr. McGahn asked you if you thought they should fire General Flynn at that point.
Right.
And what was your response?
Told him it was not our call as to whether General Flynn was fired.
Questions is, why did they favor Donald Trump? There are a number of contacts and communications that between Trump campaign officials and associates and members of the Trump administration, Jeff Sessions, as Senator Leahy mentioned, Carter Page, a former campaign advisor, Paul Manafort, who was a former campaign manager and chief strategist, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, got a friend of Russia award, Roger Stone, and of course Jared Kushner, White House senior advisor, son-in-law, and Michael Flynn. That's a lot in my mind. Now, going to Flynn, he appeared during the campaign on Russia Today. Russia Today is the propaganda arm, one of the propaganda arm of. And now, you, General, since you've retired, have you appeared on Russia Today?
Not wittingly, no.
No. Okay. And General Flynn received $37,000 for sitting next to Putin at the 10th anniversary of Russia Today. It seems all this seems very odd to me and raised a lot of questions. I was struck that Mr. McGahn did not ask you in the second meeting why DOJ, General Yates, would have concerns that the National Security Advisor had lied to the Vice President. In the first meeting, did you mention that he might be compromised?
Certainly, we went through all of our concerns in the first meeting. And it was in the second meeting that he just raised the question of essentially why is this an issue for the Department of Justice if one White House official lies to another? Okay.
I don't understand why he didn't understand that.
I'm not sure I can help you with that, Senator.
Okay. This is General Flynn, after that, for 18 days, stayed there and was in one classified thing after another.
But I do think that Mr. McGahn was trying to get to the bottom in our discussions of what had happened with General Flynn.
And he wanted to actually see the information that you were talking about.
He indicated he did. Again, I don't have any way of knowing what happened after that.
But he said he wanted to, and you tried to set that up.
That's right.
Okay. Now, about surveillance. This is very important. An American citizen cannot be surveilled in the United States for colluding with a foreign government unless you have a warrant. Is that a true statement of the law?
That's right.
Is it fair to say that incidental collection occurs even in the United States?
That's correct as well, yes.
Okay, so there's two situations that we would have found out what General Flynn said to the Russian ambassador. If there was a FISA warrant focused on him, was there? Was
Yes,
there? Yes, either one of you.
Again, I think you know I'm not going to answer whether there was a FISA warrant, nor am I even going to talk about whether General Flynn was talking to the Russians.
Okay.
Well, I have to, obviously, I'm going to go along with...
Okay. Well, if he wasn't talking to the Russians, we've had a hearing for no good reason. So clearly he's talking to the Russians, and we know about it. So if there is no FISA warrant, I'm going to find out about this, by the way. The other way that we know what he was talking about the Russian, if he was incidentally surveilled. So those are the two options. Do we know who unmasked the conversation between the Russian ambassador and General Flynn? Was there unmasking in this situation?
Are you looking at me?
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Do you, Ms. Yates?
I can't speak to this specific situation, but can I try to clarify one point on this unmasking thing?
Very quickly.
Okay, I'll try to do it quickly. As a consumer of intelligence, for example, I would receive intelligence reports from various agencies.
I get that, no.
Now, oftentimes the names are already unmasked by the intelligence agency
The
itself.
bottom line here is I want to know how it got to the Washington Post. Somebody had to have access to the information, and they gave it to the Washington Post. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. That's what it looks like to me.
Is that right, General Clapper?
Yes.
And it was, neither one of you did it.
That's right.
That's right.
How many people can request unmasking of an American citizen in our government, General Clapper? How many?
I don't have an exact number. It's, I think, fairly limited because it's normally fairly high-level officials.
How did you know that General Flynn was talking to the Russians? Who told you?
And I can't reveal that in an open setting. But what I was trying to say is that oftentimes we receive intelligence reports where the name of the American citizen is already unmasked, and it's unmasked by the intel agency because not based on anybody's request, but because the name of that citizen is essential.
Is that the situation here?
I can't, okay. Senator, I cannot.
Thank you. My
go to the
4 minutes
specifics.
is up. Thank you both, but I want to know the answer to these questions.